Well, it happened. I did one of the things I said I wasn't gonna do, and read something I already watched. Now, if you watch my stuff, usually I will tell you it's one way or the other, but this time I could not neglect Jurassic Park. Now, most people know about Jurassic Park. It's been around for decades. I mean, it became one of the biggest film franchises of all time, and when you hear that the book is really different, that the book, it's a bestseller, it's one of the top of all tops, I'll admit that, yeah, I get a little curious. And now I come back to the reason why I don't do this. I either pick the book or the show or movie and go with one or the other. Because it's happened. It finally happened where I massively agree that the book is better than the movie. And we'll get to that. I made sure to finish the book and then rewatch the movie, which I hadn't seen in quite some time. And there were notes. There was a lot to be said, but because this is a book review, I should start with the book. When it comes to reading, I could say there isn't a giant plethora of sci-fi horror in my well of knowledge. So this one actually stands out for me for now, and I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Maybe I would give it a 6.5. I wouldn't go higher. I would only go lower. I'm going to pretend like you don't know what it's about and give you the short summary. There was a man that claimed he just wanted to build a park for children to do things that had never been done and show you wonders of the world. In that, he built this park called Jurassic Park, which now we know, of course, featured dinosaurs for humans to come and see like a zoo. When I did my first impressions, which was only in text form, I had a little bit to say about Crichton's writing, which was that it was so smart, dumb, it made me mad. Not really at it in general, maybe at myself, because I'm also trying to write. And my big thing is I'm bad with characters and writing them, like their descriptors, like how they act sometimes. And my two earliest impressions of his character descriptions were for a couple in a car and their daughter in the back, and the sentence being, she was 8 years old. It didn't really describe the people at all. It just, that's all there was. And then we meet Alan Grant, and I believe the description was he wore khakis and a Hawaiian tee. I believe that was the description for him. I thought maybe it was the lawyer. I haven't double checked, but I'm pretty sure it was for him. Either way, there wasn't really a description for Alan Grant, but that's where the movie kind of helps out, where I can just pretend that the actors are the characters in the book, even though they're massively different in the movie. But again, this is the book section, so this does play out more like a slow burn horror where it wants to educate you first, which is fine and also slow. If anything hurts it, it's that, but also it's like, well, man, if he's got all the science there, this is kind of sound. It could happen. It could happen. They could do this. So most of the beginning is actually an opening to several scenes where this is already the world. It already exists. Jurassic Park exists, but it tells you the science behind it and incidents that are happening in the world because of it. And then we're finding the reasons out as you continue on and see what's going on the island. At the end of the book, Crichton dedicates and dictates who he inspired characters off of, like where he got his graphs, his scientific information, how it's all the latest computer technology, everything important you could imagine that is real, except for the stuff that's not real. And that's literally how he words it. And that part was good. I liked that. That helped. So now I think it's time we cross over into the line where we compare some parts of the book to the movie and some parts that didn't make it, some character choices, and what I really feel about that. and why I decided that the book was better than the movie. Now, the book and the movie do open pretty similarly with the attack on a crew member, and then you just get to briefly see that before it just cuts to them plotting to steal the embryos, and then cutting to meeting Alan and going on forward with the rest of the story. In the book, they deal with the attack, but not just the attack, the fact that many attacks are happening. Dinosaurs are already off the island, and they're eating people. They're eating faces. They're eating babies, and it's grim. It's dark. I mean, this is an R-rated horror, 100%, and we got a PG-13 toned down, heavily version, which in itself is a great film. If you had not read the book, yes, the film, top notch. It's up there. A lot of it holds up. When I rewatched it, some of it was kind of iffy just on the film side, but I remember it's over 20, almost 30 years old. Then the green screen parts compared to the animatronics, which the animatronics, of course, are going to hold up, but some of the green screen parts don't. And I get from the filmmaking perspective how they had to change some things, but some things felt really unnecessary. This is an opinion I've seen about Crichton, and he's passed. He passed in 2006. His books are obviously still out there, still popular, still bestsellers, and he did a good amount of work in his lifetime. However, people that were fans of him considered him one of the bigger sellouts in terms of authors to Hollywood. He was hired to write the screenplay, and it seemed like he gave in to every demand that was made. All the character choices, all the things cut, sticking true to the book didn't really work out. And it's not just because of this. I think people felt that way when Westworld happened. Again, if you didn't know, Michael Crichton was a 6-foot-something man, like myself, just a skinny dude, but I guess that made theme park rides not a good time for him, and so he wrote 2 big horror things off of it. So yes, he did Westworld and Jurassic Park, and the first Westworld movie iteration isn't great. It's okay. It's okay for its time period, but when they created the TV show, the first season, masterpiece. Great. Unfortunately, who owns Jurassic Park and what they've done with the franchise, I feel like it's too far gone, at least right now, for them to ever backpedal and create it as it was intended, or at least as the book made it so, to where it's really, really good. And we can come back to that later. Let's start with the big changes from the book to the movie. And most of that is character stuff, and then some of it's big not character stuff. The first thing that irked me is how fast they established Alan Grant as a curmudgeon old guy that does not care for kids, and that they push him and his student. Yeah, I know recently they talked about the age gap, especially when the final and the second trilogy came out and they were reprising the roles, that there was a 20-something year age gap between the actual actors and their characters, and that's because he was a college professor and she was his student, and she is actually engaged to a guy in the book, but they clearly, evidently make them have a relationship in the movie where she's pushing for kids and he overextends himself multiple times to show that he doesn't like kids, or he heavily implies it. Book him loves kids. He loves that they like to learn. He was so intrigued by Tim, who also went to the museum where they had the T-Rex, and he told them that the T-Rex was wrong, that the amount of vertebrae it had was wrong, and his dad was like, that can't be right. And he asked them, they're like, yeah, it's wrong. We've been told that before, and we just can't really do anything about it right now. And he couldn't believe his son was right about that. But Alan, when Tim was telling him that story, he was like, I've told them so many times that it's wrong. That's amazing. He was blown away by this young kid knowing all this stuff. And that leads me to the other flip around. This one was for the better. I guarantee it. And that was the kids, their ages, and their genders, which is fine. So they made Tim younger. They made the girl older. The girl is younger. She was 8 years old. I don't know why he was hung up on that. She was also 8 years old. Not the same girl from the first, wherever you caught this video on. There was a different 8-year-old girl at the beginning of the book, but this one is also 8. Just so you know. Anyways, the only way I can describe this is if you've seen Tom Cruise's War of the Worlds with Dakota Fanning, I want to say, one of the Fanning sisters, and she literally screams, cries, and complains the whole movie. That is this girl in the book, and it's almost unbearable. That was a good change in the movie, making her older and not like that. They gave her the tech skills. That was like really the only thing they gave her in comparison. I'm pretty sure that was really it. The most prolific character is obviously Ian Malcolm, and Jeff Goldblum, ironically, is not who you picture when reading the book. You want to know who I picture? It's fucking George from Seinfeld. That is who I picture as Ian Malcolm in the book, where he just goes off on tangents and rants about this and that, and it's crazy. In the book, it's spaced out, and he's dying from the wounds. You know, he gets hurt. He gets hurt in the movie too, but it doesn't seem as serious. But all his prolific quotes in the movie happen in one scene, and they're good quotes. They're great. It's just weird, like the life finds a way quote. That's not until near the end of the book, and he says it after two of the other really good quotes, which is about discovery is actually an act of forcing yourself on the planet in a not nicer way. And then yes, you guys did what you could, but you never stopped to think if you should. Of course, he says it much better, which is fine. He's an actor. That's what he's paid to do. It's just crazy that all those things were like listed one after another in the movie. I thought they were spaced out too. And then I watched the movie again, and I was like, they all happen right after each other. And that's the only time he really gets to speak, which he is speaking all through this book, and he was telling him he was wrong from the beginning. Now, some of the other minor characters I think really could have done more justice. Muldoon, I don't know. If you wanted accuracy, Samuel L. Jackson's character, who he played was correctly, but Samuel L. Jackson could have played Muldoon, which would have been closer because he wasn't some guy from the outback who just dies. That part kind of throws me. He was a very intelligent guy from Haiti, so he was of color, and he does not die because he's probably the smartest person there when it comes to survival. And yeah, that doesn't really matter in the movie. So let's round back to our main character in Alan Grant. Alan Grant is sold as your hero archetype. He's not flawed, really. He just has a couple of dalliances that, you know, are troubling at first, but obviously he'll do the right thing in the end. Whereas, like, he didn't like the kids, but he's gonna save them. Nobody saves those kids in the book. I mean, not really. Tim has to save himself when he falls in the car and gets thrown. The girl, she gets thrown out of the car and just kind of disappears for a while. And yeah, he doesn't have anything to do with saving them, really. He does get them together and goes with them on the way back, but He's not the hero he appears to be in the movie, and his actual heroic moment is not in the movie whatsoever. He goes head to head with multiple raptors and basically has to fight them. He fights them smartly and takes them out, and it's a good sequence in the book that leads to the ending being a big old oh crap. But other than that, in the movie, it's just kind of Obviously, the message isn't much different in the movie than it is the book, that people are the real villains. It never should have been done. A lot of the blame doesn't go on Hammond in the movie, at least in the movie. In the sequels, they kind of try to make it evident, and that's fine, but we're not talking about those. In the first movie, he seems sympathetic. He seems like he's doing the right thing, like he's trying to do something great, that he thinks he's bringing wonder to the world, and he's really going to make a difference. Book him is batshit insane. He does not care about anything except for making this happen. He does not care about those kids. Once he knew they were lost, he did not give a shit. He wanted the park to be working, operational, ready to go. He didn't care at what cost. He didn't care that people were dying. And ultimately, he will get his comeuppance, in the book at least. In the movie, he gets to fly off to safety with everybody else. Unfortunately, the only other character that I am kind of leaving out to an extent, because there's not much to say and there's not much to do about it, and that's Ellie. She is prominent in the movie and the book, but she doesn't really do much in either, except for one thing that really mattered. And in the movie, they used it for comedy, whereas in the book, it's very serious, and a lot of people die trying to do it. And that is turning on the power to reestablish everything. And in the movie, it's used as a joke, where she turns on the power, electrocutes the little boy, super hilarious, funny. Her getting to the power in the book, not so easy. A lot of people die. She's running from raptors the whole time. She's running, jumping off of roofs, doing parkour. It's crazy the stuff she has to do in the book. But really, other than that sequence and her distracting the raptors while they get the power on, this and that, her importance is so insignificant that it's kind of hurtful. Because she is an expert. She's brought to be an expert too. She knows everything about plants. Yes, she was Alan's student, but she is on her own to an extent. She just continued to work with him. And I think like she was just put on the back burner in both the movie and the book. That can segue into some of the things in the movie that confuse me, or I don't really understand. Let's talk about the dinosaurs. So, in the book, the sick dinosaur is a Stegosaurus. In the movie, they make it a Triceratops. And I don't get the reasoning for that, and I've not looked into it to see if they ever say. I mean, other than getting a Triceratops screen time, I couldn't imagine what the purpose was. And then I was trying to think about it after watching it, other than the green screened dinosaurs. In terms of animatronics, I think they only show about 4 or 5 different dinosaurs on screen at a different time. So you've got the Triceratops, you've got more than one raptor. So they have more than one raptor at once. So I'm going to count 2 for that, because maybe they reuse them. I'm not sure. We've got the T-Rex. And then I can't really remember beyond that whether or not the things they used elsewhere really mattered. Because my 5th would be the Diplosaurus, which is the venom-shooting dinosaur that gets Nedry, the big guy from Seinfeld. Sorry, I am blanking on your name. But that was another thing that throws me, because those things are supposed to be like the size of a bear, and they blind you and then cut you open and just have a good time messing with you. They don't even really care about eating you for food. They just want to kill you. And that instance is not the only time they run into them in the books. And from the descriptions, it sounds like they're huge. They're not some small little thing. In the book, there are 2 T-Rexes, not just one. And I want to say there are moments in the book that aren't in the movie that they came around on in the future installments, because there's a big segment where the T-Rex is after them and he's peering through a waterfall. And I remember that vividly, and I believe they use it as a scene in The Lost World. And I know The Lost World is a book sequel to this. I have not read it. I do have it, but I haven't read it at this point because this was supposed to be about Jurassic Park. But I remember that shot being in there and that being an important shot in the movie, and I thinking it was cool. And not just that, 3, which I know isn't super respected or a fan favorite, even though some people think it's iconic, especially for like the phone jingle. That's how you know they're coming. But they do the aviary, and the aviary is a small but significant part of the book. And I thought them using that in 3 after thinking about it was pretty cool. But seeing that in seeing all these places and these things happen in one book, one segment, would be cool. But I also understand how that would be hard, time-wise, restraint-wise. There's actually no reason to show them in the aviary because nothing really happens other than they get attacked. They get attacked. They get off. They're taking a boat down the river of the park because this is how they travel in the book. They travel by following the river because they know it goes back to the center of the park. And so it goes under the aviary, and they decide to get out there because they see buildings, and they get attacked. They get back on the river and keep going. So nothing actually happens of significance other than that attack, but it still could have been cool to see at the time. And it just shows what they had to cut down and what they couldn't use. And I can't fault them for that, especially during a time when it's just not feasible. Whereas now, could we get a 1-season show out of this whole book where it's good, detailed? We're getting the gruesomeness, we're getting the gritty, real details. Even if it wants to lecture you scientifically like they do in the book, I still feel like it could do really well as maybe a mini series or a 6-episode, 8-episode show, which is all they do anymore anyways. So I'm trying to think if I have any other beef between the book and the movie, and none is jumping out at me right now. It's just, there is a lot to compare, and of course I knew that was going to happen if I read the book. And I guarantee you that's not going to be the case with any of my other book choices. This one just felt too prolific to not compare it to the movie, especially if everybody knows about the movie. So the quick rundown of the ending compared to the movie and the book. The movie, they get off the helicopter, they're taken off. Alan can get the impression that, they're not going to stay there on the island. In the book, we've known they're off the island. They've seen them get off the island. And not only that, the end of the book culminates in him and a couple of the others finding caves where tons of raptors live because they have been breeding. And they found a flaw in the computer system where the computer system only counted dinosaurs when it saw them, but it never counted for dinosaurs, repopulating, or because they're not supposed to be able to, obviously, as they say many times. They're not supposed to be able to, but life finds a way. And he finds this giant underground cave system full of raptors, and they all book it for some reason, and it's because the Army or Navy, if they contacted somebody. I know in the movie they make it seem like the Navy or something. I don't know. They're not near American soil, so I'd imagine it's some sort of foreign army. But they're showing up, and the amount of noise, spooks the raptors. All the raptors take off out of the caves. They follow them, and the raptors take off. So the big suggestion is that they're going somewhere else, and chances are any of the other dinosaurs are too. So that means a whole bunch of them are out in the world, and the consequences of that were up in the air. But like I said, there is a sequel, there is a book sequel, and obviously they've made multiple films. This was me venturing out of familiar genres. I mean, yeah, maybe I've read sci-fi, maybe I've read horror. I actually haven't read much horror, to be honest. Seen plenty. Seen it up and down. Read it, not so much. So it's interesting to see how other people write. This, like I said, this guy, the way he writes is very interesting to me, and I had not seen this style before. And now that I'm getting used to fantasy writing and how some of those authors are, it's throwing me for a loop. I'm not going to lie about that. My own writing, I've seen me kind of double back and correct certain things now that I've seen how other authors write. And I think it is important to read other people's work if you're going to write something yourself, because otherwise you look kind of silly. And I didn't even realize I was looking silly until I went back and read something I did at the beginning of the last year, near the end of this last year, because I had read multiple books at that point, but not at the beginning of the year. That's a whole different conversation for a whole different subject at some other time, where, yeah, I'm writing something too. It's no horror sci-fi, but it's something. So have you read the cult classic that is Jurassic Park, or have you only seen the movie and now you're left questioning whether or not you should read the book and have the movie ruined for you? Because that's what happened to me.